Hello one, hello all. It is the most hoodie ghost of them all, Caspa in the flesh, and it's time for a review of Drake for all the dogs. Drake, Toronto rapper, singer, songwriter, the Six God, Champagne Poppy, Drizzy Drake. He is back with his latest album, and I must say, love him or hate him, the man is consistent with his releases. And no, I'm not referring to quality, because if you think I'm referring to quality, then you haven't seen my review on Honestly Nevermind and my commentary on CLB, but I did enjoy his collab with 21 Savage. I thought the bangers were great. I thought some of the low-key moments were good as well, even though there were some spots that I could have done without with. I thought it was a decent album. And honestly, I could say the same for this here, because now Drake has returned, and there's honestly more highlights on this album than I expected. And sure, even if there is a highlight, there are some bars that do make me wince a little bit. Starting with the opener, Virginia Beach, where Drake is in his melodic bag once again, and it sounds great. Like, melodically, it sounds like it has purpose, like it actually has direction, and it's actually going somewhere this time, which is so refreshing. And I must say, this is honestly his best opener in quite a while. It's honestly like Tuscan Leather Part 2, except better, where we get these beautiful chipmunked reversed Frank Ocean samples, great string samples, tight trap beat, and as I said before, Drake's vocals are sticky as ever. The melodies are very catchy. Lean into me. I will admit though, things do get a little rocky near the end of the track, with bars like see him on site like www.com, put a baby in you, you a hot mom. Why Drake, why? I mean, aside from that, I still think it's a banger. We also get a few appearances from Tizo Touchdown here. The first one on the song Amen, over this vintage gospel soul-like production that kind of takes me back to Take Care just a little bit, with some slick bars in correlation to romance and religiosity, pertaining to these bars about having faith in a relationship, and again correlating that to religion. Not one of the longest songs on here, but still a highlight for me. Unfortunately, we get the first dud in the track list, Calling For You. That's not really much of a song in all honesty, and Drake delivers some really sus bars here, where he's going after this young girl, admittedly legal, but it just reads to me as like power dynamic in opposed to finding a partner and being actually romantically interested in her. And I don't know why rappers are doing this. It's gross. It's so creepy, which was the same criticisms I had with Nas on that track Pretty Young Girl on his Magic 3 album. I do, however, want to point out that this is like a rich people thing, not exactly a rapper thing. This is like old, in their 30s, 50s, looking for a young girl to take advantage of, to manipulate, because it makes them feel powerful and it makes them feel strong, and it's, again, really, really sus and gross and should stop. Like where he says bars like, she 21, but I don't see a savage. And then follows it up with this honey bun line. And if you think that was cringe and unnecessary, wait until you hear the voicemail left by this girl that Drake took on a vacation. And then we get this non-starter verse from 21 Savage. I'm like, where's the chemistry? Where is the energy? Where is the fire that was on Her Loss? But yeah, it's just like with the fireworks I know those two to have, I just didn't get that here, and it just left me severely disappointed. As I mentioned before though, the cringe bars from Drake on this album are pretty inescapable, but at least he compensates for it in the highlights with the production and with the melodic direction he brings on this album. Like Fear of Heights, definitely a slow start with a bunch of weird anti-bars. Like, I know he's trying to say anti, but he says anti, and it just goes into weird correlations here. But immediately turns into this rage rap banger with a surprising interpolation of one of my favorite Cramps songs of all time, Can Your Pussy Do the Dog? Champagne Papi gets down to some Cramps. Okay. But I do have to point out the weird flex on the end of this track, and there are a lot of weird flexes here that we will get into. This one in particular where he says he doesn't pay for the pussy, but he tips the service. But I do love the eerie warbly synths, the dark chords, and Drake sounds so hungry and sinister on here. We get another rage rap banger, Daylight, with these blissful harmonies over these cycling synths, as Drake delivers these shouted, urgent, but hushed vocals, with clever bars like, she said she was vegan, but she eaten the goat. Damn. And then we get a obtuse, old school style beat switch that sounds kind of MF Doom like, and with Drake being an MF Doom fan, I could see how this production choice makes sense, but it's not for him, it's for his son Adonis. And I must say, the hook is it is catchy on here, and I think if Adonis tightens things up a little bit, he could be one of the best young upcoming rappers, but one of the best. But yeah, I thought this was cute, I thought this was fun, and good on Champagne Papi for this. We then get a dynamic collab between Drake and Cole, with these amped up vocal samples, and both of them delivering a lot of charisma, a lot of energy, with these triplet flows on how ambitiously Cole raps about his prowess in the game and what he plans on doing next, which breaks into this villainous beat switch, with these ghostly ascending organs, choral vocals, and Drake sounds so unbothered here. He sounds so aggressive here, and I love it. And I even love the line where he says he uses a Grammy as a doorstop. Clever line, but we will get into more talks of awards later. And then we have a collab with Yeet, which is another rage rap song, but the way it begins completely caught me off guard. That has this out of nowhere experimental jazz passage, and I'm thinking, are they gonna switch it up here and we're gonna get a jazzy experimental rage rap collage? What is gonna happen here? But no, it just breaks into your meat and potatoes rage rap song, where Yeet doesn't really bring much of anything here, and Drake doesn't bring much of anything here either. It just sounds like a by the numbers rage rap song where they just completely phone it in. Especially when Drake is saying bars like, stay with that O like a bagel, stay with the O like a lifesaver. Shout out to my ex, I'm her lifesaver. My Glocky, it sit on the table. You light on the waist like a lightsaber. I do, however, enjoy the rush of ambient instrumentation on the intro to 769 Santa. And then we get an immensely passionate vocal performance from Tizo Touchdown, where he melodically howls in like a falsetto tone, which is very clever, very unhinged, and I wouldn't expect anything less from Tizo, honestly. And then goes into Snoop Dogg playing this DJ, and it's very clever due to the title being For All the Dogs, with Tizo howling and Snoop Dogg being, you know, dog, which segues beautifully into one of the singles for this album, Slime You Out, which I wasn't too crazy about as a single, but in the context of the album, I do enjoy it a lot more, where I do think Drake delivers heartfelt vocals here, but the real star of the show, in my opinion, is SZA, who appears on this album more than once, that brings the heat vocally and lyrically with some scathing bars. How guys get carried away, tripping when the dick is barely third place, fucked out of pity, it's cute that you lame, dip cause it's mid, I can't fake like it's hanging. Damn, hate to be that guy. And speaking of hate to be that guy, I hate to be that guy, but Bahama Promises is such a throwaway track. It's like, I don't want to hear about Drake complaining about bringing this girl to the Bahamas who I would assume he only knew for like a short time, and then complaining how she ruined the trip when this could have been preventable, where Drake made his bed and he is immensely sorry that he has to lie in it. And a song where Drake did his best, tried his best, and absolutely succeeded is the song Tried Our Best, where Drake delivers some great vocal lines on here, a lot of passion, a lot of direction, and honestly, this is probably the best Drake song I have heard from him in years. Easily one of my top 10 or top 5 Drake songs of all time. Melodically, he's in his bag. The production is beautiful, killing it with the vocals over these gorgeous pianos, just twinkling over these bass and strings with these heavenly choral vocals, where Drake is singing about, despite all the effort that these two put into a relationship, it still didn't work out, and they still had to call it quits, which I feel is very relatable to a lot of people. And I love the angelic vocal harmonies here from Drake, but also I can't ignore some of the cringe bars that are on here. The gay friends, straight flight, Shakespeare, that's why you want to play right. Drake, why? But again, despite the weak bars, I think it's still a highlight. And there's also the super heavy, super intoxicating Screw the World interlude with the late great DJ Screw, with a freestyle with these deeply pitched vocals over a chopped and screwed instrumental of If I Ruled the World, which I feel, due to the slowed down pace of this track, it definitely plays into the slow burner that is next. Unfortunately, this slow burner is not hot. It does not get hot. In fact, it just stays warm to lukewarm to absolutely cold on the track Drew a Picasso. So cold and boring, instead of making me want to grab an easel and paintbrush, this makes me actually want to grab a pillow and blanket and just fall asleep. Where we get this lethargic Ty Dolla $ign ripoff, and I just hold my head in embarrassment when I hear bars like, moving like Snoopy and Charlie Brown, you trying to dog the kid. But hey, with these bars like this, it shows me he's spending time with Adonis, and I think that's a plus. But what's not a plus is how he just sounds like the bitter ex, because he's just dropping these really petty bars like how this woman's dating a basketball player now, and he's like, oh, I saw his game and he didn't score. It's like, that is so petty and such a L, but I will give Drake props for the jab at R. Kelly that's on this track. And that, I would say, is a W, so W for Champagne Poppy on this one. But unfortunately, this W and Progressive King Point does not save the track from being a complete L. And then we get even more of an L on the track Members Only, where Drake just sounds more old-timey, insecure, and controlling than ever, where he has this irrational fear of this woman he's talking to or dating, being friends with his friends that are guys. Well, now we have an idea of who Lil Aubrey is, and maybe it is necessary to be afraid. Because, I'm sorry, with bars like, I feel like I'm bi because you're one of the guys, it's like, Drake. He's like, oh, I can't be with you because you're one of the guys, because you're friends with the guys, and women and guys can't be friends, and I don't believe in platonic relationships. And I guess that future is not looking too bright for Drake. But speaking of Future, we do get a song dedicated to Future where he is looking to him as this messiah-like being, with the song What Would Pluto Do? And given Future's history, and don't get me wrong, I do enjoy some Future's music, I don't see me looking to this guy for guidance for a more positive route. Not to mention the weird drop a Cialis in the liquid bar, Adonis needs a sister bar, like, ugh. I'm sorry, but if I was a woman and a guy said that to me, I would take a rocket ship, knowing he took this advice from Pluto, and go to Pluto and probably stay there for a while. Because it just sounds like coercion and opposed to a flirt. It just comes off really gross. But probably not too far from Future. And then there's All Parties, which is a very syrupy snoozer with a very petty shot at The Weeknd, like saying like, oh, these women don't listen to Weeknd. Like Drake has this monolithic, like Drake knows the monolithic preference of like all women, like he is the seer of all Weeknd listeners. Luckily though, we do get another highlight on here, which is another addition to Drake's Time and Location series, which I probably think is his best yet. His delivery sounds cold-blooded on here. His bars on here, mostly vicious and clever, with some classy piano lines and ascending choir vocals. With bars like, it's weighing heavy on a moral scale. Knowing they go sell another Citizen Kane, they think they Orson Welles. Things get kinky after 15 years of dominance. Savage bar. Or this one right here. You trying to rob me and it's gonna feel like you sitting at your favorite restaurant because that's where you dine at? Now, there are some cringe bars here though, like, I could tell I'm getting under your skin like an orange peel, or conspiracies start floating like the Kennedy guy. After that we have BBL Love, where Drake is just shooting the piss, doing a cheeky R&B type interlude, where Drake is referencing a BBL ass to Love, saying you won't know a real one till you feel it. Can I feel it? I mean, in a way, I think it's, I pretty much take this as a tongue-in-cheek track, honestly. I don't think it's really anything too big to look into. But then we get another track that actually is cheeks, and not in a fun way. Yes, I'm talking about Gently. Like, what is Champagne Poppy? Like, what is Drake doing on here with these nasally vocals in a really cartoonish Spanish accent? It sounds so tone deaf. It sounds so gross. It sounds so racist. I'm honestly baffled that the engineers in the studio didn't stop him in the midst of recording this. Luckily though, the cringe doesn't last long and we get a reggaeton beat switch featuring Bad Bunny. And I mean, it doesn't really last long, but even this Bad Bunny verse could not save this track here. And then we do get a palate cleanser, which is Rich Baby Daddy. And look, I know I said that Wet Vagina should be a strip club anthem, but after listening to Rich Baby Daddy, I think this is the ultimate strip club anthem of 2023. From the raunchy chanted hook from Sexy Red, bend that ass over, hands on your knees. Nice melodic lines from Drake over this hypnotic ghost town DJ-like production, with some ghostly synths over these groovy breakbeats. And SZA once again comes through with some great vocals here, just soaring through the track like a angel, like a strip club goddess angel of some sort. And Red, of course, kills it at the end while delivering a flashy, sexy, flaunty verse. But then we get this melodic, atmospheric outro from Drake, which I do feel ties into the theme of the album, For All the Dogs. But I'm sorry, another late night just feels like Train Gang filler with a forgettable verse from Lil Yachty, which is disappointing because Lil Yachty was in his bag on his last album, so I'm not sure why we're getting such a phoned in verse on here from Lil Yachty, or an even haphazardly put together song. And then we get Away From Home, which honestly would have been a snoozer for me, and still a dud in the track list, but the bar that caught my eye was his really juvenile, petty shot at jazz bass player Esperanza Spalding, where he really comes off as a sore loser here, where she got a Grammy, he didn't. Like, I'm sorry, but isn't this the same guy that said awards don't really mean anything? Or isn't this the same guy that said he uses a Grammy as a doorstop? So yeah, it just sounds like he's being salty for the sake of being salty, and then just takes a shot at Michelle Obama's playlist. Like, who cares? Like, there's so much pettiness and saltiness on this album, and I just don't understand it. Like, you're Drake, you're rich. What do you care about whose playlist has what Grammy was won? Just as long as you're being successful, you don't need to invest your time in other people and your self-proclaimed L's. But yeah, and the last track is pretty much a dud too, in my opinion. And yeah, I honestly thought this album was gonna be great. It could have been great, but it's just filled with a lot of weak bars, a lot of bitter X syndrome, a lot of controlling syndrome, and it just feels like it's so non-focused. And you have these bars here that are in really bad taste, but also this has some of Drake's best songs on here, like ever, some of his best melodies on here ever. It's just a shame how inconsistent this album came to be. And yeah, I mean, look, I'm sure it's gonna do numbers. I'm sure the fans are gonna love it. I'm sure all the dogs are gonna dig it. But for me personally, I just think this is another mid-Drake album. Even though there are highlights here, but it's just mostly front-loaded. And the back end is really spotty, and yeah. So I overall did enjoy this Drake album, even though it's like bordering on mid, and there are highlights here, but yeah, too many duds for me to call this one of my favorites. But I think it's decent. Overall, I think it's decent. So I'm gonna give this thing a 3 black hearts out of 5, and yeah, that's what I'm feeling on it. But if your opinion differs from mine, great. I'm glad you enjoyed this album. For me personally, I just wanted more consistency. I wanted a consistency of better melodies, of better hooks, of better production. There was so much here that could have just gone above and beyond and could have been like one of the best albums of the year. Okay, with those bars, probably not the best album of the year, but one of them. But yeah, that's how I'm feeling on it. But if you've given this album a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? And that's it. Caspa, got the ghost, Drake for all the dogs. Till we meet again.